Steve Harvey has hosted thousands of rounds of Family Feud. He has seen contestants freeze under pressure, celebrate wildly after a number one answer, and argue with each other over strategy in the heat of the moment. But in all those rounds, across all those years, he had never seen a wife turn away from the game board, look her husband dead in the face, and confront him about his lies right in the middle of an active round with the clock still ticking, until a Thursday evening in July 2025. That was the night Natasha Boyd stopped playing the game, started telling the truth, and forced Steve Harvey to end the round, because what was happening between that husband and wife was bigger than any survey question or prize money could ever be. There was a time when the person you married was the person you could trust with everything. Your heart, your home, your future, your name. There was a time when the words, "I will always be honest with you," were not just a promise but a way of living. But when Natasha Boyd discovered the depth of her husband's deception, she did not wait for a quiet moment at home. She did not wait for a counselor's office. She chose the middle of a Family Feud round, with cameras rolling and Steve Harvey standing 3 feet away, to finally say everything she had been holding inside for the past year. And what she said left 200 people speechless, and Steve Harvey shaking his head with the kind of admiration and sadness that only comes from watching a woman finally break free from a lie she never deserved. If you believe that some truths are too important to wait for the right moment, and that every person deserves to be heard when they are finally ready to speak, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. What Natasha does in the middle of this game is something no one in that studio will ever forget. Natasha Boyd was 41 years old. She was born in Savannah, Georgia, and raised by her aunt, Colleen Davis, after her mother passed away from complications of sickle cell disease when Natasha was just 9 years old. Natasha's father was never in the picture. Colleen, her mother's older sister, was a postal carrier who had never married and had no children of her own. She took Natasha in without hesitation, converted her home office into a bedroom, and rearranged her entire life around a grieving 9-year-old who had just lost the only parent she had ever known. Colleen was not a warm and fuzzy woman. She was practical, direct, and believed that the world was not going to be gentle with a young black girl who had no parents, so she had better be tough enough to handle it. She woke Natasha up at 5:30 every morning for school. She checked every homework assignment. She made Natasha read 1 book a week from the public library and write a 1-page summary before she was allowed to watch television on Saturday. It was strict, sometimes frustratingly so, but underneath every rule was a fierce and protective love that Natasha would not fully appreciate until she was much older. Colleen told Natasha one thing more than anything else. She said it so often that Natasha could recite it in her sleep. A woman who does not speak up for herself will spend her whole life speaking someone else's lines. Natasha memorized the words, but for most of her adult life, she did not live by them. That would change on a game show stage in front of the entire country. Natasha graduated from high school and attended Savannah State University on a partial scholarship, earning a degree in business administration. She worked her way through college as a receptionist at a real estate office and discovered she had a talent for organization and client relations. After graduation, she was hired as an office manager at a mid-sized accounting firm in Atlanta, a job she held and excelled at for the next 15 years. She ran that office with quiet efficiency. She remembered every client's name, every deadline, and every preference. Her boss once told her that she was the only person in the firm who could manage 12 accountants during tax season without raising her voice. Natasha smiled at the compliment. She did not tell him that she had learned patience from a woman who had raised a grieving child on a postal worker's salary. She met Damon Boyd at a corporate networking event when she was 28. Damon was 31, a sales director for a technology services company that sold software to mid-sized businesses. He was polished, ambitious, and articulate. He wore tailored suits and carried himself with the confidence of a man who had grown up being told he was destined for great things. He was the kind of man who made eye contact when he spoke and remembered what you said in your last conversation. Natasha was drawn to his certainty. She had spent her life being the responsible one, the organized one, the woman who held everything together for everyone else. Damon seemed like the kind of man she could lean on. They dated for 2 years. Damon met Colleen, and the meeting was tense. Colleen asked him hard questions about his intentions, his finances, and his past relationships. Damon answered them all smoothly, with just enough humility to seem sincere. After he left, Colleen sat at her kitchen table and said to Natasha, "He says all the right things. That is what worries me. The ones who say all the right things have usually had a lot of practice." Natasha dismissed it. She loved Damon. She thought Colleen was being overprotective. They married at a small ceremony in Atlanta. Colleen came and sat in the front row with her arms crossed and her best dress on. She did not cry during the ceremony, but she held Natasha's face between her hands afterward and said, "Remember what I told you. A woman who does not speak up for herself will spend her life speaking someone else's lines. If you ever need to use your voice, use it, no matter where you are or who is listening." For the first 9 years, the marriage was functional, not magical, not storybook, functional. Damon worked long hours and traveled frequently for client meetings. Natasha managed the household and continued excelling at her office job. They had 2 children. Their son, Elijah, was now 12, a thoughtful and observant boy who loved science and kept a journal that he never let anyone read. Their daughter, Zara, was 9, a social and talkative girl who made friends everywhere she went and who had inherited Colleen's bluntness in a way that delighted her great-aunt immensely. The cracks had started showing about a year before the Family Feud appearance. Damon's travel increased. His explanations became vague. He had always been a man of precise details, exact hotel names, specific client names, clear itineraries. But over the past 12 months, the details had gotten soft. He would say, "Meeting in Charlotte," instead of naming the client. He would say a conference downtown, without specifying which one. Natasha noticed. She was an office manager. Her entire career was built on tracking details and catching inconsistencies. But every time she asked a follow-up question, Damon deflected with charm or turned it into a joke or accused her of being suspicious. So Natasha stopped asking. She did not stop noticing, but she stopped asking. What Natasha eventually discovered 2 months before the taping was a credit card statement that Damon had accidentally left open on his laptop. A card she did not know existed. On it were charges for hotel rooms, restaurant dinners, and jewelry purchases in cities where Damon had claimed to be at client meetings. The charges spanned 11 months. The total was over $23,000. Natasha printed the statement, put it in her work bag, and did not say a word. She was done asking questions. She was ready to make a statement of her own. The Family Feud appearance was Damon's idea. He saw it as a fun team building exercise with the family. The team was Damon, Natasha, Natasha's co-worker and close friend Janine, Damon's younger brother Curtis, and Colleen, who was now 73 and had agreed to come only because Natasha asked. Colleen told Natasha on the phone, "I do not like game shows. But I love you, so I will stand on that stage and look foolish if that is what you need." What Colleen did not know was that Natasha needed her there for a very different reason. She needed Colleen standing behind her when she finally used her voice. ACT3E. Teach SteeroGGLE 41200s. The Boyd team was matched against the Simmons family from Detroit, Michigan, a loud and lovable family of 5 led by twin sisters who finished each other's sentences and a grandfather who danced every time their answer appeared on the board. The studio energy was high and fun. Steve Harvey was in top form. During introductions, Damon played his part flawlessly. He introduced Natasha as the woman who keeps my whole life running, the best mother, the best partner, my everything. He looked into her eyes when he said it. He squeezed her hand. Natasha smiled back. To anyone watching, they were the picture of a solid, loving couple. Colleen, standing at the far end of the lineup, did not smile. She watched Damon the way a retired postal carrier watches a dog that might bite. The game progressed through the first round without incident. The Boyds won the face-off and cleared the board on a question about things people forget at hotels. Damon celebrated loudly. Natasha gave high fives to her teammates. Everything looked normal. The second round began. Steve read the question. We asked 100 people name something a lying husband spends too much money on. The Simmons family was playing the board. They gave their answers. Hotels, dinners, gifts. Then they got 3 strikes. The steal opportunity went to the Boyd family. They huddled. Damon confidently suggested a second phone. The family agreed. Damon stepped up to give the answer. But before Damon could open his mouth, Natasha stepped forward. She moved past him to the center podium, positioned herself directly in front of Steve Harvey, and said something that was not a game answer. It was a detonation. $23,000, Steve. That is what a lying husband spends too much money on. Hotel rooms his wife does not know about. Dinners she was not invited to. Jewelry she never received. $23,000 in 11 months on a credit card I was not supposed to find. She turned to Damon. The studio had gone completely still. 200 people stopped breathing at the same time. I found the statement, Damon, 2 months ago. I printed it. I have read every line, every charge, every city, every restaurant, every piece of jewelry I never got. I have been carrying it in my bag for 63 days, waiting. And you brought me here, to this stage, to play a game about lying husbands, and you thought I was going to stand here and smile. The silence in the studio was so complete that the hum of the lights overhead was the loudest sound in the building. Steve Harvey stood at his podium, his card in one hand, his mouth slightly open, his eyes moving between Natasha and Damon with the focused attention of a man trying to process multiple revelations at once. Damon's reaction happened in stages. First, confusion, as if he could not believe what was happening, then recognition as the weight of her words registered, then something that looked very much like panic. He tried to speak. Natasha. Baby, what are you? Do not, Natasha said, and the single word cut through the air like a blade. Do not call me baby. Do not tell me I am overreacting. Do not tell me it is not what I think. I am an office manager. I read financial documents for a living. I know exactly what $23,000 of lies looks like on a credit card statement. And I know what it looks like when a man who says I am his everything has been spending our family's money on someone who is not his family. Janine, Natasha's coworker and friend, stepped closer and put her hand on Natasha's back. She had known about the credit card for weeks. She had helped Natasha print the statement at the office. She had sat with Natasha in her car during lunch breaks while Natasha cried and tried to decide what to do. Now she stood beside her, silent and steady, exactly where a real friend should be. Colleen had not moved from her position at the end of the lineup, but her face had changed. The guarded expression she had worn all day was gone. In its place was something that looked like pride. Fierce, unfiltered, 73-year-old pride. Her niece was finally speaking up. The words Colleen had been repeating for 32 years were finally being used. Curtis, Damon's younger brother, stood with his arms crossed and his head down. He would not look at anyone. Whether he had known about the affair or simply suspected it, his body language suggested that this revelation was not as shocking to him as it was to the rest of the room. Steve Harvey set his card down slowly. He looked at the production booth, made a subtle gesture with his hand, and said 5 words that officially ended the round and everything else that was supposed to happen that evening. That is it. Round is over. The Simmons family grandfather, who had been dancing and celebrating all day, had gone completely still. He was looking at Natasha with an expression of deep respect, the kind of respect that one generation gives to another when they see something genuine happening. The twin sisters from the Simmons family were holding each other's hands, both of them wiping tears. Even the production crew, people who had seen hundreds of tapings and prided themselves on professional detachment, were standing motionless, some of them with their hands pressed to their chests. ACT4THEURNNROUMD 12500 16700. Steve pulled out his earpiece and walked to the center of the stage. He moved with purpose but without urgency, the deliberate pace of a man who understood that this moment needed to breathe before anyone tried to shape it. He spoke to Natasha first. Natasha, before I say anything else, I want you to know what I just saw. I saw a woman who has been carrying a $23,000 secret for 63 days. I saw a woman who did not throw that credit card statement across the kitchen table in anger. She held it. She waited. She chose her moment, and she chose this stage, this game, this question to say what she needed to say. That is not impulse. That is courage that has been building for 2 months, and I respect it more than I can tell you." Natasha nodded. Her eyes were glistening, but she had not cried. Not yet. The composure she had built over 63 days of silence was still holding. Then Steve turned to Damon. The warmth drained from his voice like water from a sink. "Damon, 10 minutes ago you stood on my stage and called this woman your everything. You said she keeps your whole life running. And that is true, is it not? She does keep your life running. She manages your household. She raises your children. She goes to work every day and manages an office full of people. And while she was doing all of that, keeping your life running, you were spending $23,000 of your family's money on someone else, on hotel rooms and dinners and jewelry that never made it home to the woman you call your everything." Steve stepped closer. "Let me tell you what gets me, Damon. You are a man who sells things for a living. You know how to pitch. You know how to close. You know how to say exactly what people need to hear to get them to trust you. And you used those same skills on your wife. You sold her a story about late meetings and client dinners and business trips, and she bought it because she loved you, and because love makes people want to believe the person they chose. But here is the problem with being a salesman at home, Damon. Eventually the customer checks the invoice, and your wife checked the invoice." The audience erupted in applause. Deep, emotional, cathartic applause. Steve waited for it to settle. "I have failed in marriage, Damon. I tell people that openly because I think honesty about your own failures is the price of admission for being able to speak to somebody else about theirs. I know what it is like to be the man who messed up. I know what that shame feels like, but I also know that shame only has value if it changes you. If you feel the shame and keep doing the same thing, then it is not shame anymore. It is just a performance, and performances are what salesmen do. What I am asking you right now, in front of all these people, is whether you are ready to stop performing and start being real, because that woman and those 2 children you have at home deserve a real man, not a sales pitch." Damon stood with his head lowered. His hands were at his sides. The polished confidence that had carried him through introductions and the first round was completely gone. What was left was the stripped-down reality of a man who had been outmaneuvered by the truth and had nothing left to sell. "She is right," Damon said quietly. "About everything. I do not have a defense. I do not have an explanation that makes it okay. I spent money that belonged to our family. I spent time that belonged to our family. And I lied about it every single day for almost a year. Natasha, I know this does not fix anything. But I need you to know that what you did just now, standing up here and telling the truth, that is braver than anything I have ever done in my life. And I am ashamed that you had to be that brave because of me." Natasha looked at him for a long time. Then she turned to the camera, and what she said was not directed at Damon anymore. It was directed at every woman watching who had ever carried a secret she did not create, who had ever wondered if she was wrong for doubting the man she loved, who had ever stayed quiet because she thought silence was the same thing as loyalty. 63 days. I carried that credit card statement in my bag for 63 days. I went to work with it. I cooked dinner with it in my purse hanging on the chair. I put my kids to bed with it sitting in the next room. And every single day I told myself it was not the right time to say something. Not yet. Not here. Not now. I kept waiting for the right moment, and then I realized something my Aunt Colleen taught me a long time ago. There is no right moment for the truth. The right moment is when you are ready. And I am ready. She looked at Colleen, who was standing at the end of the lineup with tears rolling down her weathered face. Colleen nodded once. A small nod, the nod of a woman who had waited 32 years to hear her niece use the voice she had always known was there. The standing ovation lasted nearly a full minute. The Simmons family across the stage were on their feet. The grandfather who had been dancing earlier was now wiping his eyes. Steve Harvey stood at center stage with tears on his cheeks, shaking his head slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Steve said, his voice thick with emotion, "I have seen a lot of things on this stage. But I have never seen a woman interrupt a game show round to tell the truth about her own marriage. Natasha Boyd did not wait for the right time. She made this the right time. She stood up in the middle of a survey question about lying husbands, and she showed every person in this building and every person watching at home what it looks like when a woman finally decides she is done being quiet. That is not a game show moment. That is a life moment, and I will remember it for the rest of my career. ACT 5T LACY 1612. The game was never completed. Both families received their full prizes and compensation. The Simmons family matriarch found Natasha backstage and held her for a long time. She said, "Baby, I have been married for 42 years. And the reason I have been married for 42 years is because I married a man who never gave me a reason to stand up on a television stage and tell his business. You deserved that kind of man. And if you do not have him yet, you will, because a woman who speaks like that attracts truth, and truth attracts the right people." When the episode aired 5 weeks later, it became one of the most discussed Family Feud moments of the year. The clip of Natasha stepping past Damon to the center podium and reciting the exact dollar amount was viewed over 85 million times in the first month. But the moment that resonated most deeply, the one people shared over and over, was her final speech about the 63 days. Women posted it with captions like, "This is for every woman still carrying someone else's secret in her bag. And the right moment is when you are ready." That last phrase became a mantra for women in situations similar to Natasha's. Therapists reported clients referencing it in sessions. Support groups used it as a discussion prompt. It became one of those rare cultural phrases that transcended its origin and took on a life of its own. Natasha returned to Atlanta and went back to work at the accounting firm. She did not do interviews for the first month. She focused on Elijah and Zara, making sure their daily lives stayed as stable and predictable as possible while their family restructured around them. Friends said Natasha handled the transition with the same quiet efficiency she brought to managing the office. She cried when she needed to cry. She leaned on Janine and Colleen when she needed to lean. And she showed up every single day for her children without ever letting them see the full depth of what she was processing. The response from viewers was intense and deeply personal. Thousands of women wrote to the show sharing their own stories of carrying secrets they did not create. A therapist in New York wrote a widely shared article about the concept of burden carrying, using Natasha's 63 days as a framework for understanding the psychological toll of knowing a truth you are not yet ready to confront. The article described the specific way that carrying proof of betrayal changes a person's daily experience, how ordinary actions like making dinner or putting children to bed become layered with a secondary awareness that the life you are maintaining is built on a lie. The therapist wrote that Natasha's decision to speak on the Family Feud stage was not impulsive but therapeutic. It was the completion of a process that had been building for 63 days, and the public nature of the disclosure ensured that the truth could never be walked back. Zara, Natasha's 9-year-old daughter, handled the transition with a directness that reminded everyone of Colleen. A few weeks after the separation, Zara told Natasha, "Mom, I am glad you said what you said on that show. You always tell me to be honest even when it is hard. Now I know you meant it because you did it when it was the hardest thing ever." Natasha said that her daughter's words validated every agonizing minute of those 63 days. Natasha and Damon separated 6 weeks after the episode aired. The divorce proceedings were handled through mediation. Natasha's documentation of the credit card charges made the financial settlement straightforward. Her attorney said it was one of the cleanest cases she had ever handled because Natasha had done the forensic work herself, organizing every charge by date, category, and city before she ever set foot in a law office. Damon did not contest the terms. The $23,000 was factored into the settlement, and Damon agreed to full repayment to the family savings account over 18 months. Colleen moved from Savannah to Atlanta 3 months after the episode aired. She said it was to help with the children, but everyone knew it was because she could not stand the idea of Natasha going through any of it without family nearby. Colleen took over the morning routine, getting Elijah and Zara ready for school so Natasha could leave early for work. She cooked dinner every night, the same way she had always done things, with practical efficiency and an unstated love that filled the house without ever needing to announce itself. Natasha told a friend, "My aunt is 73 years old, and she rearranged her entire life for me, just like she did when I was 9. Some people leave. She stays. She always stays." Steve Harvey spoke about Natasha at several events in the months that followed. At a women's conference in Chicago, he said, "I have been asked what the bravest thing I have ever seen on my stage was. People expect me to name a contestant who risked everything on a final answer. But the bravest thing I have ever seen was a woman named Natasha who stepped past her husband in the middle of a round, walked to the center podium, and told the truth with a dollar amount, a timeline, and a composure that made every single person in that studio feel small by comparison. She did not need the round to end. She ended it herself. She decided that her truth was more important than the game. And she was right." Damon, to his credit, did not disappear or lash out publicly. He posted a single statement after the episode aired. "My wife confronted me on national television because I never gave her a safe space to confront me at home. Every time she tried to talk to me, I deflected. I charmed. I sold her another excuse. She stopped asking not because she stopped caring, but because I made asking feel pointless. Natasha did not ambush me on that stage. She used the only platform I left her. I have no one to blame but myself. She was braver than I ever was, and my children will grow up knowing that their mother chose the truth when their father could not." Janine, Natasha's co-worker and closest friend, gave one interview. She said, "I sat in that car with Natasha during our lunch breaks while she held that credit card statement and cried. 63 days. I watched her go back inside after every lunch break, fix her makeup, and manage a team of 12 accountants like nothing was wrong. That is who Natasha is. She does not collapse, she carries. But on that stage, she finally put the weight down. And I was so proud of her I could not breathe." Elijah, Natasha's 12-year-old son, wrote something in his journal that Natasha found months later when he gave her permission to read it. On the page dated the day after the taping, he had written, "Mom said something on the stage today. She said the right moment is when you are ready. I think she has been ready for a long time. I think she was just waiting to be brave enough. I want to be that brave one day." Natasha said reading those words was the moment she knew everything was going to be okay. 1 year later, Family Feud invited Natasha back for a special update segment. She walked onto the stage to a standing ovation that went on for over a minute. She wore a tailored black blazer and a single gold bracelet that Colleen had given her for her birthday, engraved with 3 words on the inside, "Use your voice." Steve hugged her and asked how she was doing. Natasha smiled, a full, honest, unhurried smile. "Steve, I am doing something I could not do for a long time. I am living a life where everything matches. What I say matches what I feel. What I see matches what I know. There are no hidden credit cards. There are no unexplained charges. There are no stories that do not add up. My Aunt Colleen moved in and she cooks dinner every night and my kids are happy and my house is honest. It is smaller than the one I had before. But it is mine. Every corner of it is true, and true is the only thing I want to live in for the rest of my life." Steve pointed at her. "That right there. That is the answer. The number one answer. True is the only thing worth living in. Survey says 100 points. Nobody is beating that." The audience laughed and applauded. Natasha laughed too, and beside her, standing just off stage where the cameras could barely see her, Colleen was watching. She was not clapping. She was not cheering. She was just standing there, 73 years old, arms at her sides, watching the girl she had raised from 9 years old speak on a national stage with a voice that shook the room. And on Colleen's face was an expression that the cameras missed, but that Natasha saw when she turned around. It was the quiet, steady look of a woman whose whole life's work had just proven itself. Her girl had found her voice, and once Natasha Boyd found it, she never lost it again. If this story reminded you that the right time to speak the truth is whenever you are finally ready, and that the people who stay when life falls apart are the ones who matter most, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. We bring you the most incredible and emotional Family Feud moments every single week. Real families, real courage, and real voices that refuse to stay quiet. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.